The countries can help ensure peace and prosperity in the region. America's Secretary of State flew to North Korea again. The ex-CIA chief is expected to meet with the regime's top officials to discuss details of the Washington-Pyongyang summit and the release of detainees. News Center begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, live from our studio in Seoul. This is Arirang News Center. Welcome, I'm Daniel Che. President Moon Jae-in became the first sitting South Korean leader to visit Japan in over half a decade today, meeting with his counterpart in the host country and the Chinese premier. It was an extra busy day for the liberal leader, who got a lot done during the sit-downs. Hwang Ho-jun in Tokyo starts us off with the long overdue three-way meeting.
Diplomacy was the name of the game. Resuming the three-way talks for the first time since 2015, South Korean President Moon Jae-in, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, and Chinese Premier Li Keqiang said they thoroughly discussed how their countries can work together to deal with the North Korea issue while seeking the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and the establishment of lasting peace in the region. They welcomed the outcome of the recent inter-Korean summit and even adopted a special statement welcoming the Panmunjom Declaration. In that statement, they also expressed hope for the success of the upcoming Pyongyang-Washington summit and pledged joint efforts for peace and stability in Northeast Asia. Of course, the focal point of each leader reflected a slightly different approach. President Moon voiced the importance of holding the trilateral summit on a regular basis.
항구적 평화 정착을 위한 과정에서 삼국 간 긴밀한 소통과 협력이 지속적으로 이루어지길 기대하고 약속합니다.
The Japanese Prime Minister stressed that the international sanctions on North Korea need to be adhered to get the regime to take concrete action, such as resolving the decades-long issue of its abductions of Japanese citizens.
It is the three countries' common stance to completely fulfill the UN Security Council's resolutions on North Korea issues.
China wanted to make sure that it would still be able to exert influence on North Korea-related affairs.
China hopes for the restoration of dialogue and for a political resolution of the Korean Peninsula issue by making the most of this opportunity. To this end, China will continue to play a constructive role.
Economic cooperation between the three countries was also mentioned. The leaders noted that their combined GDP accounts for around 20% of the global economy and agreed that together they can accomplish anything. They also attended a business summit, encouraging business leaders from all three countries to do more together. President Moon stressed the need to jointly tackle trade protectionism, and he called for joint efforts to conclude negotiations on the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP, a regional free trade pact involving South Korea, Japan, and China, as well as ASEAN nations. The recent inter-Korean summit and the Panmunjom Declaration were apparently more than sufficient reasons to end the trilateral talks' 2.5-year hiatus. And now, with the emergence of North Korea on the global stage, three-way cooperation between Seoul, Tokyo, and Beijing has become critical to navigating the region's changing diplomatic landscape. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News, Tokyo.
Staying in Tokyo, President Moon held a number of sideline summits with the PMs of Japan and China. Considering the flurry of diplomacy in this part of the world, taking center stage was, of course, North Korea. Our chief China correspondent Moon Gun-young has the details.
On the sidelines of the South Korea-Japan-China trilateral summit, South Korean President Moon Jae-in on a day trip to Tokyo held multiple talks with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe and Chinese Premier Li Keqiang on Wednesday. President Moon's hour-long face-to-face with Prime Minister Abe at the Japanese head of government's office centered mostly on Mr. Moon's historic meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, who is expected to have a summit soon with the U.S. President Donald Trump.
Prime Minister Abe stressed the importance of timing when it comes to easing sanctions on North Korea, saying North Korea cannot be rewarded just for closing down its nuclear test site or not launching ICBMs. There must be additional, more specific action by North Korea. President Moon replied South Korea has no plans to do so without the consent of the international community.
The two leaders also discussed ways for lasting peace settlement on the Korean Peninsula and agreed that Japan will be able to play an important role in maintaining peace and prosperity in the Northeast Asian region. Mr. Moon and Abe agreed that the issue of abduction victims is important for Japan in its efforts in normalizing diplomatic relations with North Korea. The South Korean and Japanese leaders' fourth bilateral summit in the last year ended on a more celebratory note at a luncheon meeting that followed.
I would like to thank President Moon Jae-in for making this visit, especially as he approaches his one-year anniversary since being inaugurated.
Meanwhile, the mood on North Korea was noticeably different at a meeting between South Korean President Moon Jae-in and Chinese Premier Li Keqiang later in the afternoon. The two agreed on the importance of their joint efforts to peacefully denuclearize North Korea and saw eye to eye on the need to seize this rare opportunity for peace settlement on the Korean Peninsula created by the Inter-Korean Summit and the North Korea-U.S. Summit soon to take place.
The two leaders agreed that the international community, including the United States, should actively participate in ensuring a brighter future for North Korea in the form of regime security and economic development support should the North carry out complete denuclearization.
문건영, Arirang News.
So, why has it been over 2.5 years since the three nations held a trilateral summit of this kind? Various disputes between the countries caused them to drift further apart, and now North Korea's denuclearization brought the parties back to the discussion table. Kwon Jang-ho explains further.
The leaders of South Korea, Japan and China seem to be on the same page towards North Korea. In the first trilateral meeting of this kind since 2015, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe and Chinese Premier Li Keqiang expressed their support for the Inter-Korean Summit and the Panmunjom Declaration and pledged to continue cooperation with Seoul on the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Seoul and Beijing had been reluctant to hold such a summit in recent years because of territorial disputes with Tokyo. But recent developments with North Korea seem to have brought the three nations together, as explained by Professor Song Se-ryun speaking to Arirang News on Wednesday.
We have a much larger issue of the peace treaty and the peace process in the Korean Peninsula. All those disputes and tit-for-tats have been kind of subsumed under that big agenda. So I hope that the relationship that gets better and better would probably look for some ways of resolving some of the issues that we have been struggling with.
Professor Song also stressed that there was a need for the three key regional players to at least show signs of a united front to show support for the US summit with North Korea, which is set to be the real litmus test of whether Kim Jong-un is serious about giving up the regime's nuclear weapons.
It was a necessary and timely dialogue among the key players, and sort of like lining the ducks in a row before the big talk between the North Korea and the United States. Necessary messages were aired, support for the Panmunjom and complete denuclearization support.
Differences in the details of how to deal with North Korea remain, as to individual bilateral tensions. But for now, the possibility of peace and stability in the region has brought the leaders together in the same room, and they left with a promise to meet more regularly. Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
For the second time in a matter of weeks, the U.S. Secretary of State is in North Korea. With officials there, he is likely to hammer out details in preparing for the upcoming Washington-Pyongyang summit. Mike Pompeo's previous visit to the regime was veiled in secrecy, but this trip was announced by President Trump himself. Woo Jung-hee has the highlights from the ex-CIA chief's meeting with his North Korean counterpart.
Setting the past aside, North Korea and the United States promised to make joint efforts to establish peace on the Korean Peninsula. Landing in Pyongyang on Wednesday local time, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo met with North Korea's Kim Yong-chol. Kim Yong-chol is a close political aide to Kim Jong-un and was Pompeo's direct counterpart for talks on the North Korea-U.S. summit when Pompeo was head of the CIA. Kim first told Pompeo that Pyongyang has high expectations that the U.S. will play a big role in establishing peace on the Korean Peninsula. Pompeo responded that the American side is also committed to achieving exactly that. He also expressed hope that the two could work together to solve the conflict despite having been enemies for decades. The news of Pompeo's departure for North Korea was abruptly announced by U.S. President Donald Trump on Tuesday during his announcement on the Iran nuclear deal. His remarks pointed to the possibility that the date and location of the North Korea-U.S. summit could be announced quite soon.
We have our meeting scheduled, we have our meeting set. The location is picked, the time and date, everything is picked, and we look forward to have a very great success. We think relationships are building with North Korea.
Some key agendas for the Kim-Trump summit are also expected to be nailed down. As Pompeo has told reporters, this visit aims to set a concrete framework. Hopes are also high that the three Americans detained in North Korea could return to the U.S. with Pompeo, especially because, unlike the previous visit a month ago, Pompeo's visit this time involves a couple of American reporters, raising the prospect that the Trump administration might want to create a dramatic scene. Pompeo has said he had not yet received a commitment from the regime that it'll release the detainees. But he added he will bring up the issue, saying he hopes Pyongyang will, quote, do the right thing. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un made another secret visit to China. The last time he traveled there was slightly over a month ago. During the second round of talks with his Chinese counterpart, the duo agreed to strengthen strategic cooperation. But according to our Hong Yu, how Pyongyang will include Beijing in the ongoing dialogue for denuclearization and peace remains to be seen.
Strengthening strategic communication between Beijing and Pyongyang. That was the main focus of the talks between the leaders of North Korea and China at their second summit earlier this week. Using his private jet, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un flew to China's northeastern city of Dalian on Monday for a two-day trip, only about 40 days after his first summit with President Xi in late March. And at the summit talks, the leaders of Pyongyang and Beijing saw eye to eye on the significance of North Korea and China ties amid the ongoing diplomatic turnaround on the Korean Peninsula. Both leaders expressed hope to take their relations to the next level and further strengthen their strategic communication. President Xi highlighted Beijing's role. He said China is paying great attention to the recent developments on the peninsula and pouring constant efforts into ensuring regional peace and stability. Views are divided as to why Kim Jong-un made the visit at this time. Some say Pyongyang could be playing its Beijing card as some areas are proving difficult to iron out with the U.S. in denuclearization talks. But others believe North Korea could be looking at a bigger picture to seek a more balanced diplomacy between Washington and Beijing after North Korea-U.S. talks. While things have been rolling out at a rapid pace among the two Koreas and the U.S., it remains to be seen whether China will join the fray and complete a four-party structure. Hong Yu, Arirang News.
The United States is withdrawing from the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. Following the announcement, President Trump's national security advisor hinted that the move could be a way of sending a message to North Korea. Experts have contrasting views on the move. Some fear it might derail the ongoing efforts to denuclearize the regime. Lee Ji-won brings us their take on the matter.
I am announcing today that the United States will withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal.
With Tuesday's announcement from the White House, the U.S. has officially withdrawn from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action forged in 2015 aimed at curbing Tehran's nuclear program in exchange for eased economic sanctions. President Trump said the U.S. has definitive proof Iran has been lying about its nuclear activities, adding that the Obama-era deal was too weak to fully denuclearize Iran, even if it fully complied with the deal. He warned that the highest level of economic sanctions will be imposed, and any nation that helps Iran develop nuclear weapons will also be strongly sanctioned by the U.S. The sanctions related to Iran's energy, auto, and financial sectors will be imposed after 90-day and 180-day wind-down periods. Other signatories to the deal who had been trying to dissuade President Trump from making this decision expressed their regret in a statement. Britain, Germany, France, and the EU said they will continue to implement the deal, while Iran responded by saying it could restart industrial enrichment of uranium. But Iran's President Hassan Rouhani said he would wait a few weeks to discuss the matter with Iran's allies and other signatories to the nuclear deal first. While the decision was widely expected, eyes are now on whether the decision will affect a possible North Korea-US denuclearization deal expected to be made at their summit in the coming weeks. At a press conference after Tuesday's announcement, John Bolton, Trump's national security advisor, said the message to North Korea is that the president wants a real deal and that the U.S. will not tolerate inadequate deals. Experts have mixed views on whether President Trump's decision will have an impact on what appears to be an impending denuclearization deal with Pyongyang. And while some say it may seem to give the U.S. the upper hand, North Korea could also end up requesting more from Washington.
It could seem like the U.S. is indirectly pressuring Pyongyang for a complete denuclearization deal, but the North could also ask the U.S. to give it a rock-solid security guarantee, so the U.S. cannot simply ditch the deal unilaterally at a later date.
But others doubt President Trump's decision to scrap the Iran deal will bother the North Koreans at all.
I don't think it will have a significant effect. The North Koreans never had much interest in the Iran deal. When people in the West kept suggesting that the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action with Iran was a model for a future North Korean deal, they felt compelled to come out and state explicitly, no, this is not a precedent for us. We have the bomb, Iran doesn't. It suits their needs. It doesn't suit ours. It's irrelevant.
With U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo visiting North Korea for the second time on Wednesday, eyes are on whether the two sides can iron out their remaining differences and finally announce the date and location of their highly anticipated summit. 이지원, Arirang News.
The city of Paju captured the attention of the world when it hosted the historic Inter-Korean Summit. Curious about the region that is just south of the demarcation line separating the two Koreas, a growing number of visitors have been flocking to the area. Our Park Hee-jun was there to turn the spotlight on the various tourist attractions.
Paju City in Gyeonggi-do Province is close to North Korea, both in terms of distance and history. And within the city limits is Imjin-gak, a village built in 1972, a couple of decades after the Korean War armistice was agreed. Imjin-gak is only about 7 kilometers away from the demarcation line. This village stands as a symbol of hope for reunification between the two Koreas. And after the 2018 Inter-Korean Summit was held nearby in Panmunjom, more and more people have been visiting the area.
Following the summit, the number of visitors to some attractions has nearly tripled. It's a popular spot for those wishing to get a close-up understanding of the two Koreas' history. But it's also a great destination for couples and families to take some time off and relax.
Last day, so between there was this meeting between these two presidents, and so now I was thinking that it was the good time to know more about this situation, this political situation.
Hopefully there will be more exchanges between the two Koreas through roads and railways so that I can also visit Baekdusan Mountain.
And thanks to the soaring numbers of visitors, restaurants and cafes in the area are also seeing better business.
Sales are 2 to 2.5 times higher than around a week ago. Many people are visiting Imjin-gak out of curiosity from the meeting between the two Koreas.
At the village, visitors can take a trip back through history to the war that separated South and North. It's one of the world's most heavily guarded borders, but the atmosphere is calm and quiet. To boost tourism in the region, the government plans to create more attractions and increase the city's annual festivals. And with hopes for peace and reunification in the air, Paju could have even more visitors in the future. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News, Paju.
Next year's government budget will be focused on creating jobs and tackling the nation's low birth rate. The announcement was made by the Ministry of Strategy and Finance today at a meeting on local government financing. According to the ministry's director in charge of budget, tackling youth unemployment will be the top priority. Korea has been struggling to create jobs for young people, and through 2021, the job market will need to absorb some 390,000 so-called eco-boomers, referring to people born in the 80s and 90s. Another urgent issue that could affect the government's finances is dwindling number of newborns. Last year, South Korea recorded its lowest ever total fertility rate, 1.17. Asia's largest video content event kicked off in Busan today. Around 2,000 buyers from 48 nations will attend the 12th International Busan Contents Market, held at the Bexco Convention Center, to see the latest contents from around the world and to expand business opportunities. There will be a wide range of seminars, forums, and festivals during the 4-day run. Arirang TV, the station you're watching, will also share its knowledge on how to create ICT-combined Hallyu content with 15 media personnel from Middle Eastern countries and help them better understand local content. The market is being hosted by the Busan Contents Market Organizing Committee and is sponsored by the nation's Culture Ministry as well as the Busan Metropolitan City. Sewol-ho, the ferry that capsized during the tragic accident in 2014, which still remains a mystery, has been lying on its side at Mokpo New Port for some time now. Finally, it will be lifted upright come Thursday. To ensure the operation goes smooth, a test lift was conducted this morning. Kim Yong-chol gets us up to speed with the developments.
4 years ago, South Korea witnessed its worst ever maritime disaster, which claimed the lives of 304 people, mostly high school students on a field trip to Jeju Island. The Sewol-ho ferry, carrying 475 passengers, capsized in waters off the country's southwestern island of Chindo on April 16, 2014. Last year, the rusty body of the 6,825-ton ferry was finally raised out of the sea, and it now lies on its side at the southwestern Mokpo New Port. Until now, the exact cause of the tragedy still remains a mystery. But in less than 24 hours, the Sewol-ho ferry will finally be set upright, opening possibilities for new findings that could help uncover the truth behind the incident. Earlier this week, the local shipbuilder in charge of the operation, Hyundai Samho Heavy Industries, installed 33 steel beams on each side of the ferry and connected wires to them from a 10,000-ton floating crane to pull the vessel upright. Ahead of the long-awaited operation, the Seoul Investigation Committee held a rehearsal from early Wednesday morning, successfully pulling the vessel up by 40 degrees and lowering it back to its original position. The committee says it will begin pulling the vessel upright at 8 a.m. on Thursday and aims to finish the operation in 4 hours due to safety reasons. Kim Yong-chol, Arirang News, Mokpo.
Time to turn to Michelle back at the Weather Center for the updates you need. Michelle, the weather is looking so good these days, but is there anything in particular we should be keeping our eyes on?
Well, Daniel, the sun is warm and the air is clean, and so nothing's keeping us from going outside. Tomorrow, the whole country is generally clear, except for the eastern part of Gangwon-do, where it'll be wet until tomorrow morning. The air quality tomorrow will generally be normal, but keep in mind that the dust will accumulate in the morning and night temporarily, especially over in the central western regions and southeast regions. Now, tomorrow's Seoul will begin the morning at 11 degrees Celsius, while Daegu and Gyeongju begins at 9 and 6 degrees. But as we all know, it'll warm up a lot into the day, with Seoul rising up to 21 degrees, while Gwangju 23, Busan cooler at 19 degrees. The sunny spring weather will linger through Saturday, and then there is going to be another nationwide rain over on Sunday. From now on, the rain won't be enough to cool things down much. The highs will only be rising. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That's all we have for you in tonight's edition of Arirang News Center. Wherever you may be tuning in from, thank you for staying with us.